Good evening, everyone, and welcome to day 5 of CWHE's 16 Days of Activism interview series. My name is Wendy H. Lewis. I am the District Manager and Chair of Caribbean Women Honors and Empowerment, the Trinidad and Tobago chapter. This evening, I'd like to introduce our host for the entire series, Mrs. Marsha Bailey Owen. Mrs. Marsha Bailey Owen is a gifted individual who has a passion for service and children. Mrs. Bailey Owen is the holder of a bachelor's in social work with minors in psychology and social policy. At the postgraduate level, Mrs. Bailey Owen holds a master's degree in social work with specialization in administration and management. Her career began in the public sector in the area of family intervention, moving on to child protection. As a social work professional, Mrs. Bailey Owen has managed social service agencies and social workers in the public sector. Mrs. Bailey Owen's social work experiences range from clinical interventions to social work management, policy formulation, and human resources management. Mrs. Bailey Owen is a founding member of Caribbean Women Honors and Empowerment, Trinidad and Tobago chapter, and has served as Vice Chair and Social Services Director for the past 5 years. Let's welcome Mrs. Bailey Owen.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Wendy. It is indeed a pleasure to be here again this evening.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you, and it's an honor to share this platform with you. We are going to introduce our guest speaker for this evening, Mr. Rhondall Feeles. Mr. Rhondall Feeles is a businessman and social activist in Trinidad and Tobago, who is currently the Vice President of the Trinidad and Tobago Automotive Dealers Association and Founder President of the Single Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and has 2 sons. Mr. Feeles and the Single Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago for the last 7 years have partnered with key governmental, non-governmental, and private stakeholders to raise awareness, advocate for legislative reform, provide legal advice, offer family counsel and welfare support to families across Trinidad and Tobago. In 2015, the Single Fathers Association collaborated with the Emancipation Support Committee and the delegation of the European Union on the national project, Gender Equality and Fatherhood, a project geared toward the empowerment of fatherhood throughout the nation. Academically, Mr. Feeles has a bachelor's degree in law from the University of London. Mr. Feeles is a member of the post-COVID-19 roadmap recovery team. Mr. Feeles has his own journey of being a victim of abuse. Let's welcome Mr. Feeles. Mr. Feeles, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'll be on video in a short while.
Not a problem. Welcome to the platform. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for agreeing to be a part of our interview series. I will now be disappearing from the screen, and I'm going to allow Mrs. Bailey Owen to take over.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Wendy. And again, good evening to those on Facebook Live. And we are here on continuing our journey on our 16 days of activism and in relation to gender-based violence and the elimination in particular of gender-based violence. So Mr. Feeles, if I would start with you, I know you're not on camera and I'm hearing the little noises in the background, so I assume that you're doing your fatherly duties.
Yes, I had to pick my boys up because they have test tomorrow, so you have to forgive me.
That's quite all right, we understand. But maybe that might be a good jumping off point for us, for you to be able, I saw in your bio that you would have stated that you too were a victim of abuse. And, you know, for those in the listening audience and who may listen down the road, how can a man be a victim of abuse? You know, that's usually the question. So if you don't mind sharing with your journey.
All right. Well, let me correct you in my bio. It didn't have that I was a victim of abuse. But what I would say is that I believe that many men have been abused. And I might say, even I myself, I would say, may have been abused as well. This is what we term abuse. We see abuse most times as physical. And even according to our law, which is Domestic Violence Act, you would see that there is also penalty for emotional abuse, financial abuse,
Financial, yes.
verbal abuse, all these different types of abuse. But because our society does not see these non-physical elements of abuse, we don't consider ourselves abused. So as you said, in my bio, I didn't say I was abused, but even I as well can say that, hey, I've been in a relationship, I've been in multiple relationships where I can tell you things have been thrown at me. I can tell you hurtful words have been said to me, a lot of
Right,
things. And
correct.
many a man would have gone through this kind of abuse, but not deem it abuse. Because
Right.
socially, two things. We as men are not taught that we can be abused. And if you say that you are abused, it means that you are a weak man. And secondly,
Yes, yes.
we socially don't view non-physical violence forms of abuse as abusive.
Hmm. Agreed. On yeah, and I would want to agree with that. As a social worker myself, even when men who are victims, and I have had a few cases, to be honest, with men who are physically abused, but emotionally and psychologically, because there's a saying that women, our tongue sometimes is our worst weapon, and so we use
Mm.
that to belittle, to demasculate men. But you said you had two sons, so what are your lessons to your sons to try to reframe and change their mindset and their socialization into how they view the whole fatherhood and masculinity?
Well, definitely. I mean, my greatest lesson I could teach my boys is a lesson that I didn't really get the opportunity to learn. Because you teach children, I realize they learn the most from what they see you do,
Which
more than what
ones?
they hear you say. Eh?
Right.
So the way I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I always say that I vicariously live through them, because the relationship that they have with me is a relationship that I would have wanted with my father. We had it until my mom and dad separated, but
Right.
thereafter, the the connectivity that I have with my boys, the response. So when I call their names, if I go to a cricket game with them, the response, if I say Nathan, Jadon, the way that they, it's like if their ears automatically perk. Those are things that I didn't experience, so I don't understand it. So vicariously, I try to live it through them, so to speak. So one of the main things I think I'm teaching them through fathering them is the value of fatherhood, because they are getting the opportunity to experience that. They should not have a doubt that, hey, I have a father that loves me equally as much as I have a mother that loves me.
Okay.
I don't need, they have a sense of belonging, a sense, a historical sense of knowing where they came from. Many young boys who don't know their fathers, don't know their grandfathers. Many young men don't know their grandfathers. They don't have an idea of their history. They don't have an idea of where I actually came from. Hence the reasoning, it's so easy many a times to encourage young boys to go astray, because they don't know the cloth they are cut from, so to speak. So
Right.
those are some of the things that I teach my boys: the value of who they are, the value of where their lineage is. They know, I did, as I said, didn't have a strong relationship with my dad. I made sure that they had one with him. So they know their grandfather. They know their grandfather only in a good light. So they have an understanding of the root of fatherhood that persists throughout their family.
Right. And so we're talking in terms of elimination of gender-based violence. And I know you would have been very vocal in terms of advocacy, in terms of legislative changes to assist the system. What do you see as important for whether it's for the educators, for the policymakers, for the politicians, in helping our boys and our men transform and understand violence in any form is not accepted. So I know you said you have a relationship, a very strong relationship with your sons, but how can that be translated outside of the home and, let's say, into the classroom, into the public setting? What programs or policies you can see maybe instrumental in getting this done?
Yeah, I think definitely even more so than just policy. Or I know we like policies and we like a lot of theoretical approaches. I think it has a lot to do with socialization, how we socialize our boys, how we socialize our girls. And it needs to take a holistic approach, as I always say. We need to take a holistic approach to non-violence, where we encourage young boys and young girls to understand that no party should be violent to the other. Both parties are to be respected, no matter how insignificant or how little it seems. Even if I just felt a violent word at you, or no, I just felt something in your direction, but it didn't hit you, or I physically put my hands on you. This should never happen from any party to the other party. We are human, and we both must. If someone understands the value of non-violence towards them, then they must understand the value of non-violence being meted out to anybody else. And I think that is it. And the culture that we have is a generally violent culture. I mean, I know we've seen it before. There was a great level of machismo behind and behind the most dominant male, or the strongest male, or the male could fight the best. He's the one actually the woman liked more. He's the one that the men feared more. And that is the whole understanding, I think. And sometimes violence transcends and translates not only from man to man, but it happens from man to woman. It's now not only happening from between women and men, but there's a great level of violence now, increasing violence from women to women as well. And that's a discussion that many people are afraid to have and not having as well. But violence in its entirety, and that's due to the fact that a lot of us are now less emotionally intelligent. So at the easiest spark, violence is being meted out from whatever gender, males to males, females to females, males to females, females to males, because there is an existence also of violence from women to men, physical violence.
Physical violence.
That we don't, as I said, we don't ever speak about, because in our society, we have the strong belief that, and I mean, I've been told this a million times, don't hit a woman, which I agree with, but you're always told don't hit a woman even if she hit you. The thing is, the message that we must be saying is that nobody must hit anybody else.
Don't hit, correct.
Don't hit in the first place. You understand? And that is
it's important.
Exactly. That we need to redirect that. A lot of young, I grew up with a single mother, so I could tell you what I was taught. Never hit a woman. You understand? And then you yourself teach yourself these things, particularly if my mom and dad relationship had become abusive. So especially when you see your dad hit your mom, you of yourself tell yourself, I will never hit a woman. Right. But I can tell you, and I have no shame to say it, I have allowed women to hit me. The reason being, I've told myself, I will never, and sometimes you tell the woman that as well. Sometimes you tell the woman that, hey, here we're going on. I see my mother getting licks from my father, so I could never hit a woman no matter what she do me. Right. And some women will take opportunity on that and hit you. Because you have exposed yourself and your deepest secret that I wouldn't hit a woman because mentally I saw that happen to my mom, and I am not going to put my hand on a woman. And some people will take advantage of that. It's all a twist of power, you know. I don't think it's only because of gender, you know. Whoever in a relationship,
yes, it is about power.
It's a power control. It's a wielding of power. Whoever is the more powerful, whoever earns more, and there are women earning more than men these days, they are the one that have the chips in their corner. Or if there's a woman that is stronger physically than a wife. We see many times women beating men, and that's in the instances, sometimes the rare instances when physically the woman's stature may be more dominant than the man's. And it begs me to wonder, is it just per se directly a gender issue, or it's just a human issue where people, as I said, once they have levels of power given to them, they sometimes don't understand how to use and wield the power that they possess.
Yes, but you articulated very well when you spoke about emotional intelligence, and you also spoke about socialization. And throughout the past 4 or 5 days, we have been discussing the importance of emotional intelligence and understanding how that can be translated into the way we speak, the way we act, the way we react, what we say to our men our young boys, as opposed to what we say to our females. And so it begs the question, is the time has come now for us to then revisit what we teach our children in school, and the age in which we teach it. Your boys are fortunate that they have a father who is saying to them, this is what manhood looks like, this is what fatherhood looks like. But the reality is, and through no fault of their own, as a social worker, I have had many men come to me and say, but this woman is not allowing me to be a father, or not allowing me to be a better parent to my child. And so we really do have to revisit how we socialize. So do you agree that what we teach our children, or how we teach our children, needs to be revisited?
Yes, definitely. I mean, the lessons that we need, and that's the same things I was saying. A lot of the things that we were taught, particularly with boys, we need to let boys know that it's okay to be emotional. Or else, how do we want them to have emotional intelligence? It's okay to
Yes,
show emotion. It's okay to
correct.
express when you're not feeling happy, when you're feeling sad, when you're feeling down. It's okay to cry. You understand? There's no weakness in these things. You understand? The way we've cultured young boys who've grown into men now is that, hey, you are not a victim, you cannot be a victim, you cannot be
Yes.
abused. So that even though emotional abuse, and I often say, if we nip it in the bud and treat particularly with the non-physically violent forms of abuse or violence, we definitely will preempt the physical part in many circumstances. Now, some people are culturally violent,
Yeah.
and I mean, that'll be a different type of work. But in many other scenarios, you get a lot of people who kept a lot inside and who possibly came into a relationship keeping a
Mm-hmm.
lot inside from since they were children, young boys particularly. And then after all this implosion, the implosion then creates an explosion. So, hello, you with me? Hello?
Hello,
Yes, I'm hearing you.
I'm
I,
hearing you, but I think our screen is frozen.
yeah, I think so. I think the host got cut off there.
Okay, bear with
Mhm.
us 1 second. Let me see what's going on. Mr. Fields, hi. Mrs. Bailey Owen is having some technical difficulty there. So the good thing is we both do the same thing in terms of interviewing and understand the 16 days of activism series. So I am going to take over until she jumps back on.
Not a problem, not a problem.
One of the things I heard you mention, because I was taking copious notes, because
Good.
this is really an interesting interview. You spoke about socialization, and you
Right.
spoke about the fact that that is something that we need to focus more on, as opposed to the theoretical side of things. How do you
Mhm.
propose we communicate that and initiate that in not just the community, but our twin island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago?
You're right. Well, I'm glad you used the word community because I feel strongly it should be done in the community because a lot of the number of communities is what actually makes up the society, being
Correct.
involved in the community.
Mhm.
So I believe it's important, and that's why our organization, we partner a lot with the community police. Community policing, it can be used so strategically that I think that we are actually way behind the game because getting the community police involved, I mean, sometimes we work very closely with the central division. We use the stations. Sometimes they carry it to the places where the needs are. And also many people who are in need or who being abused, they find themselves in the police station. So if they find themselves in the police station and have that outlet of restitution that can be found in the community police. I mean, what we did, not just community police alone, what we had created together with the community police is a multi-sectoral committee where, I mean, we are not, a lot of NGOs, other state organizations were involved together to have that holistic approach and trying to treat with a number of issues, crime, domestic violence, and a number of things like that. And I think that is the way we need to start. We need to start sensitizing the community. And what we had is a lot of the community groups. We had a lot of community groups and NGOs that were formed, CBOs, community-based organizations that were formed within the communities to sustain and maintain the community. So when you had the heads of those community-based organizations in critical partnership with you in those multi-sectoral groups, then you create the opportunity now for they to continue. So even if you start stuff in the community, you have the CBO now continuously putting it into the minds of the first generation, second generation, and going forward. So I think, as I said, that socialization and that normalization, you could say, of certain things that we consider abnormal, which is like male expression of a vulnerability, male expression of, hey, I can be abused, or just social acceptance of different forms of abuse, not just the physical violence. I mean, the ads sometimes that we put out on television, it speaks and reeks that we are uneducated in the depths and the rooting of violence. Because TTPS ads, a number of NGO ads are hinged on just the violent forms. And though it is of great importance, it is more a reactive approach instead of a proactive approach, where we should be dealing with the younger ones who now wanting to get into relationship, teaching them to communicate better, teaching them to respect each other, teaching young boys, because a lot of boys in this generation have grown up with single moms, as I said, myself included, and a single mother, particularly one who's been abused or one who's been through that experience, and in fear of their sons becoming abusers or in fear of anyone's daughters having to be abused, they will teach their sons, don't ever hit a woman, make sure you love your woman, make sure you love your children. But then there's a very important lesson that is left out, and I could say it was left out even from my mom, and she was a stellar single mother. We hardly ever told that, hey, make sure that your family love you too. Make sure your wife loves you. Make sure that you feel loved. Make sure that your children loves you and you feel love as well. So that the love that you're giving out, you feel like it's reciprocated. Because if you just train to love, and you're giving, but you're not receiving. Exactly. Or you're not in a place where you're open to receive, or you don't believe that you should receive, because you wasn't told that as a man, you should be loved, you should be cared for, you should be appreciated. Then it will be hard for you, even if somebody trying to love you, for you to feel loved. So as I said, we need to revisit the way that we socialize our children in the home, the way that we socialize the other children in the community, the way that we socialize children in the schools. We need to get rid of that whole, you could hit me, I can hit you. That nobody should put their hands on anybody else, whether you're male, whether you're female. People shouldn't even be hitting animals. That's the reality of it.
And so we need an unbiased message.
Exactly, because we want an end to all violence.
Yes.
We want violence to end. And once we can eliminate violence itself, or make people more emotionally intelligent, then violence to women will decrease, and violence even that men are meted out to men will decrease as well. Because we can't just treat with violence from men to women, or even just women to men, because men are violent to men. Women are violent to women. So the issue here is more so violence than anything else. Exactly. So we need to keep that focus. We can't say it's okay to deal with a scenario, and I see that a lot happening with a lot of advocacy and a lot of NGOs, and they often get upset with me and think that I am against the NGO, but it's not that. It's hard for me to see we advocate and we see when men are abusive to women,
Yes.
and rightfully you advocate and you make sure that stops. But then when we see blatant violence of 3 women beating another woman in a square or beating a woman in a store and pulling off her hair for a next man, there's nothing said. It's like, because a woman is beating a woman, it's okay to get licked by a woman. Because a man is beating a man, it's okay for a man, because we're the same gender, so we are allowed to pounce and punish and be violent to the same gender.
So it's not a
And it just makes no
sexist
sense.
issue, it's an issue.
Exactly. It's a human issue. Nobody wants to feel violence meted out towards them.
So I saw Mrs. Bailey Owen is back with us. I have one more question and then I'll hand you over to Mrs. Bailey Owen. In terms of, I understand your agreement in terms of the socialization and how we're going to get the community involved, but how do you suggest we do that in the middle of a global pandemic?
And that's a very, very good question. I mean,
because we don't know when COVID is going to end, and we've already almost a year has passed.
Exactly, and we can't continue to wait, particularly in times like this. This time is when people are more emotionally and mentally tested than ever before, because a lot of the distressing outlets that they used to have, whether it's in the hair salon, the barber shop, whether it's in church and the mandir and the places of worship, these places were places to distress. So now, as they are less accessible, now you have to now contemplate on becoming innovative. Some people may think that these podcasts or these Zoom meetings are less effective, but I don't think so. I think they've claimed their place, because they allow now the opportunity of, direct intervention. The message is still getting out there, the passion, people could still see the passion on your face. People could still understand, still get our message across there. Whoever looking now could be learning so much right now as we speak.
Exactly.
So it's about keeping that going even after, even post-COVID. This is something, this is something that we had recommended as part of the COVID team as well, because as a part of the social sector that dealt with public interest. And the need and the importance for the continuity of all the things that has been taking place before National Family Services. I know they're up and running. They're supposed to be up and running and functioning on social media platforms as well. You need to keep that going. You need to continue to have as much of these as possible, particularly in a time like this. I know there are churches are having their sessions like this as well. You're going to you have police youth clubs are having sessions like this as well. And it's now sometimes given the opportunity. So if you couldn't come physically, now you have the opportunity that you could be there virtually. So I think that even post-COVID, this is still something that should continue. We've been forced into it, yes. But God knows why everything happens.
Correct. I would have done the question, I would have preempted the question bit, which is normally at the end. So I will hand over to Mrs. Bailey Owen. I think we have 2 to 3 minutes left. So
well, thank you. But I think unfortunately today, my internet, I'm not really hearing either. So Mr. Feeles, I don't know if you're hearing me.
We are hearing you.
Really, just to say thank you. I know you have been that voice in this who has been championing not only the cause of fatherhood, but I always wanted to say this, and I heard you mention your mother, and it could be just me, but I don't think there's anything such as a single parent, because some people use it as a badge of honor, and some women more so use it to ostracize the men, to keep the men out. It took 2 persons to make this child, and so you may be parenting
alone.
Alone, parenting singly, but you're not a single parent. And I think we also need to reframe that dynamic in terms of what we say, because it sends a particular type of message. You talk about the machismo men, but the women now wear it as a badge of honor. Well, I am a single parent and I can do this on my own, and eliminate the men out of the picture. So whilst we also need to send the message about reframing in terms of how we think about violence, we also need to reframe how we talk about single parenting. So I know
Yeah.
it's now 6:30, Wendy, and I know I would have missed a lot. So I do have to go back and listen. I'm not sure what is happening with my internet today, but really, I know a lot of persons would have benefited from you being on, Mr. Feeles, and giving us that male perspective, and more importantly, that insight into how we treat with violence.
In,
Thanks
in,
for
a
having
wrap,
me.
in wrapping up, I just want to acknowledge directors from the Caribbean Women Honors and Empowerment, Mrs. Kwamina and Mrs. Williams, well, we call her Auntie Oslin, who are on the live, and all the other people on the live, Danielle, Keita, we have people on the Facebook Live. And Mr. Fields, we will definitely be speaking beyond today, because we want to partner
Yes.
with you on some things, because although we are Caribbean Women Honors and Empowerment, we are an international NGO. We have 13 chapters in Africa, 11 in the US, 9 in the Caribbean. So
Wow.
one of the things we recognize as well is we advocate for issues surrounding women, obviously because of our international mandate. But we are not a feminist movement. And we do recognize that we
Right.
need to do more collaborations. So we will definitely be calling on you
Together.
to partner with you with some stuff. And we would really appreciate if you can tune in to some of the other interviews coming up. In particular, next week, Saturday, not being
I will.
biased in any way, but you mentioned the spiritual element.
No problem.
And next week, Saturday, we have
Of course.
Bishop Dexter James coming on. And for those on the live tomorrow, we have a child. Of course, the child will remain anonymous and there'll be no camera, but we'll be interviewing a child tomorrow evening, and the 16 days of activism continue. So once again, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. And Mrs. Bailey Owen, our amazing host,
Thanks for having
my
me.
sister friend, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Have a blessed evening, everyone.
Have a blessed evening, everyone.